Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Gamecock Central Radio. Football time here with Collyn Taylor. I'm Emerson Phillips, and we are just 10 days away from the start of Gamecock football. We're going to be talking about it here on Gamecock Central Radio. Collyn, let's start with transfers, and I want to start with a position that is the area of concern, it seems, coming into this 2018 football season, year 3 of the Will Muschamp era, and that's the safety position. And we got a couple of transfers. Collyn, Nick Harvey comes in from Texas A&M. And JT eBay has transferred in from Rice. eBay is a graduate transfer. So how much of this is Muschamp and the staff saying, hey, we need help at safety right now, so let's try to find some transfers?
Yeah, and, they obviously looked at the roster and saw that there was one guy returning with extensive experience. And they went out and searched that grad transfer market until they came up with, Nick Harvey and JT eBay, and both guys are experienced. Harvey is probably right now in line to be starting safety besides Montag. Harvey obviously coming from the SEC, eBay with some experience playing at Rice that wanted a new challenge. So I like what they brought in, and I think it'll be a nice bridge year to kind of get some of the younger guys that are playing safety now kind of ready to go once eBay and Harvey leave.
We're recording on this Wednesday, Collyn, and Will Muschamp spoke on the radio today here in Columbia. He was on 107.5 The Game on the afternoon show, and he said that Harvey and eBay are among the top 4 players working to safety right now.
Yeah, and, right now, if the season started today, I would think that Montag and Harvey would be your 2 safeties, and then you have the ability to rotate in a guy like an eBay who's working back to fully healthy, and Jam Williams, who they've been working there too. Jam's been a little bit inconsistent, but they like what his skill set brings at that position, and it frees them up to use another corner spot. So right now I think Harvey and Montag are probably your 2, but I think eBay is more than likely the first guy off the bench if they need to rotate safeties in and out.
Okay, Muschamp said the top 4 players at safety right now are Montag, Jam Williams, Nick Harvey, and JT eBay. So that's what he said on the radio today, 10 days from kickoff. Collyn, we've got some other transfers and some newcomers to the program that could have an impact here in 2018, and I want to get you to talk about some of those. Let's talk about Jamel Cook, who transferred from Southern Cal. That's another transfer that we need to talk about. What's his status right now? And talk about Josh Belk, the in-state product who is from Richburg, South Carolina, played at Louisville High, spent last year at Clemson but did not play, and has transferred to South Carolina.
Right, and so with Jamel Cook, he's the ultimate latest addition in the class, transferring from the other USC in California. Just one of those situations where he wasn't getting playing time and wanted to come to a school, somewhat closer to home. He's originally from the Miami area, played high school football with Keir Thomas. So they've applied to get eligibility for him right away. But similar to Belk, they just haven't heard anything right now. With Belk, it's kind of the same situation. They're both kind of in this weird state of limbo, just a little bit over a week before kickoff. They've filled out all the paperwork. They've submitted everything to the NCAA, and now they're just kind of on the NCAA's timetable of whenever that organization decides to announce anything is kind of when they're going to know. So Muschamp said he's been optimistic about Belk and getting Belk eligible to play since he hasn't played a snap for Clemson yet. So the hope is that they get Belk at least to come play and add some, depth to that defensive line. So everyone's just kind of in this weird wait and see moment right now.
Collyn, wasn't Belk rated a 5-star prospect, and he's listed at 6'3", 359 on the Gamecock roster right now?
Yeah, I think he was a 4-star coming out of high school, but a top 10 player in the state. Number 21 in his position, a 5.8 on the Rivals rankings, 4-star kid, and he came in at probably 359. I think they whittled him down a little bit to right around 330, 335. But from everything that we've heard from players that have played against him and his defensive line teammates, that he's already come in there and been one of the strongest defensive linemen in the group just as a freshman. I mean, not even a year removed from high school yet.
Yeah. Collyn, you got to wonder what kind of shape he's in at 359 pounds, but a very legitimate space eater in the middle if he can get on the field.
Yeah, and when he can get down to the kind of weight that they want him to play at, probably in that what you saw Javon Kinlaw play at last year in that 310 to 325 range. That's, I think, what's going to be the best for him and the best for South Carolina is a strong guy that can take up 2 blockers on the defensive line. So that's the hope for Belk if he does get cleared this season. But if not, then he'll have a year under his belt to kind of get used to the system and then step in as probably one of the starting guys next year too.
All right, we're talking about newcomers here on Gamecock Central Radio. 10 days from the season opener with Coastal Carolina. That'll be a noon kickoff on the SEC Network at Williams-Brice for South Carolina and Coastal Carolina. Collyn, let's stay with the secondary here. We talked about safety, and that's a position of concern. Cornerback seems good at the top of the position, but we're concerned about depth there. And one player that is another newcomer is true freshman J.C. Horn out of Alpharetta, Georgia. And his father, Joe Horn, was a hell of an NFL player for a number of years, played with the Saints and a couple of other teams, I believe. And J.C. Horn has had a good fall camp.
Yeah, and weird enough, I'm showing my age here, but I grew up watching Joe Horn play. Still remember the cell phone thing or touchdown. So hopefully we'll be seeing a little bit of Joe Horn at games this year. But from everything that we've heard is that J.C. Horn has come in and just looked really good. They've even, Muschamp said today on another radio show down in Charleston that, if the season started today, that J.C. Horn would be in their nickel package as one of their 5 best defensive backs. So that's a guy that they're really, really high on. He's got good length. He plays man coverage really, really well, which is something they've liked. And it's just a matter of getting him up to speed. And he's already taken first and second team reps this camp. And every offensive player that we've talked to about the defense has raved about how good he is compared to, some of the other freshmen they've seen at this point in their career. So, it'll be interesting because I think that day one with moving Harvey to safety gives you an extra spot where you can shift Keeson Nixon in from the outside spot to the inside nickel and then put J.C. Horn on the outside. So there's a lot that they could do with him, and I think he'll see a lot of his fair share of snaps this year.
Looking like Horn's going to get on the field right away. So, Collyn, the top 3 at corner right now are Rashad Fenton, Keeson Nixon, and J.C. Horn?
That would be my guess. They haven't released a depth chart yet, but that's my guess right now as to who they're going to see. And you could also see some Jam Williams played some nickel for them last year. Then they have other guys like Israel Mukwamu that's looked good. So I think there'll be a rotation. But if I was going to pick the top 3 guys, it would be Fenton, Nixon, and then Horn, just kind of as a collective group.
All right, one more newcomer that I wanted to talk about with you today, Collyn, is Rosendo Lewis, the linebacker from Deerfield Beach, Florida, 6'2", 240 pounds. This guy was a wrecking ball in high school. You look at his high school tape, he looked very good, but he's been banged up this fall.
Yeah, a guy that they have hopes to be the future of the middle linebacker position at South Carolina. They like the way he plays. He's a thumper. That's the best way I can describe him. He loves to hit. He loves to get his nose in there and get dirty. So I think that he's there. He's had a little bit of a shoulder problem. Was in some non-contact stuff the last time we got to see practice. So with a pretty good brace on it, but it's just a matter now of getting those physical reps. He's gone through camp with the mental reps and in the meetings and whatnot, but now it's about getting on the field and really putting what he's learned in the meetings to work. And if that can catch up with the mental side, if the physical side can catch up with the mental, then I think he has a chance to play some snaps this year. But if not, then it could be a special team situation, and I think you'll see a lot of Sherrod Green, Danny Fennell, T.J. Brunson, Eldridge Thompson, and Bryson on the lanes as that core linebacker group.
All right, let's turn our attention to the offensive side for a moment here, Collyn, and I want to ask you first about this up-tempo offense that we've been hearing about that the Gamecocks are going to implement in 2018. How's that coming along?
From everything that we've heard and everything that's been said publicly, this is they have really, really high hopes, and they're kind of ahead of the curve and where they think that they would be. So there's nothing but optimism right now. Rico Dowdle's come out and said that they've kind of had to stress once a play ends in 7 seconds, let's go out and let's run another play, just to keep the defense from substituting and just keep it kind of everybody moving and taking advantage of stuff on the outside. So from everything that we've heard, that South Carolina really feels like they have the scheme and the athletes to be able to effectively run this and run it well.
And Muschamp has said repeatedly this summer that Jake Bentley plays better when the offense is up-tempo.
Yeah, and there's less scheme that goes along. He did a lot of RPO and up-tempo stuff at Opelika when he was in high school. So this is kind of going back to what he's more used to and more comfortable with. I think that when you give Bentley, especially as quick as they threw him into the fire and as quick as they tried to pile stuff on with the offense, it might have gotten a little overwhelming and he was in his head a little too much. Now it's just you go and you just make as quick decisions as possible to try and exploit some mismatches. If you see one-on-one coverage, throw the deep ball, If not, hand the ball off or check down. So there's not a whole lot of thinking about what could go wrong, which is something he says is really, really beneficial for his game.
Collyn, the running back position appears to be solid. Rico Dowdle is healthy, and the Gamecocks have got 3 proven players at that position, and the Gamecocks look good at running back right now.
Yeah, and when you look at it, if Tyson Williams can get a little bit more consistent compared to what he was last year, I think it'll be a dangerous group just because they kind of check off all the boxes. They have the speed guy in A.J. Turner, and then they have this bowling ball of a running back in Mon Denson, and then they have Tyson and Rico Dowdle, who have kind of, I wouldn't say more polished, but they have a little bit more to do. And A.J. Turner's a strong back too. So I think that there's a lot of different things that this running back group can do. If Tyson Williams can come along, and Bobby Bentley has said a couple times this, or at least once this spring, or not spring, but at least once this fall camp, that Rico and Tyson have both kind of separated themselves in that running back group. And he kind of expects big years from them in terms of being able to run fast and do different things in the offense.
Yeah, Turner, Williams, and Rico Dowdle, the top 3 at running back. Mon Denson factoring into that position as well. Collyn, the success of the offense in 2018 will center, obviously, around offensive line play. And with the movement of Donnell Stanley to center, it feels like, and based on what I'm hearing this summer, it seems like the Gamecock offensive line could be the best unit they've had in years.
Yeah, and there's a lot of optimism there, even from Will Muschamp himself. He thinks that this is the best group that he's had in his time at South Carolina. And when you look at it, they have, about 60, a little bit less than 60 returning starts on the offensive line. You have 3 guys that started almost every game last year, if not for injury, and Donnell Stanley moving to center, Zach Bailey moving back to guard, and Dennis Daly at your left tackle spot. And then you insert Cedarius Hutcherson, who's had about as good of a camp as anybody has had on the team. And then Blake Camper, who's they've said has rededicated himself to the weight room. He's kind of rededicated himself to playing football. So there's a lot of optimism. And even if they get incrementally better from last year, it should help keep the pocket cleaner just that much longer, the holes open for that just a little bit longer, which will help the athletes on the other side of things.
We really haven't touched on wide receiver much, but Collyn, I've heard the Gamecocks may have a top 5 receiver group in the country this year. I don't know how generous that is. I don't know how accurate that is, but I've heard national experts saying the Gamecocks may have a top 5 group at wide receiver.
And that's really not that far off. I'd put them probably in my top 5 or top 10 just because you have Deebo Samuel, who affects the game no matter where he is on the field, kickoff, backfield, whatever he's doing, he's going to make you pay for any kind of mistake you make. Brian Edwards, who's developed into a number 1 receiver with Deebo out last year, or Trey and Shi Smith, who both caught a lot of starts last year when Deebo was out. And then you bring a guy like Josh Vann into the mix, who's already kind of a natural playmaker from everything they've said. Brian Edwards was really high on Josh Vann. So it'll be interesting to see just because, they do have the talent to be able to do it. And bringing Deebo back into the fold kind of makes defenses really have to key on him, which opens up space for guys like Ortre, guys like Shi, and guys like Brian Edwards.
Place kicking position still up for grabs. Collyn, talk special teams. I know you had Joseph Charlton, the kid from AC Flora High School, Columbia native, local product on your all-SEC team at punter, but we're still not sure about place kicker.
Yeah, it's still an ongoing competition, but Will Muschamp said after the scrimmage last week that if the season started today, that Parker White would probably be your starting kicker. They've done a lot of good stuff in terms of this offseason about making sure the snap and the hold are clean for White. And White's talked a little bit about getting better too and trying to improve his accuracy, especially from over 40 yards. And at the other big lingering spot, because Devo's going to be your kick returner and Joseph Charleston's going to be your punter, is at that punt return spot. And they think Brian Edwards is going to kind of fit into that slot. But you have other guys like Nick Harvey and a few others kind of working there to kind of foster competition there. But Brian Edwards is likely going to be that guy.
Fantastic. Collyn Taylor, thanks for the time today. A lot more Gamecock football to come. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
All right, that's Collyn Taylor, and I'm Emerson Phillips. This is Gamecock Central Radio. 10 days till kickoff. Stick around.